Alright, hi friends, it's Miss Caitlin. I'm gonna show you how to be baking one of my favorite things that my mom sent me the recipe for while we're stuck inside. So we're gonna make oatmeal butterscotch bars. So, it's gonna need 2 different bowls, butter at room temperature, 2 eggs, brown sugar, flour, butterscotch and chocolate chips, vanilla, baking powder, white sugar, salt, and oats. You also need a pan that we're going to grease and all your different measuring cups. Alright, so we're about to bake. We're going to get messy, so I need to change and wash my hands. So, our first thing is we preset the oven to 375. Let it get nice and warm while we're baking. And we're gonna start with what's called our wet ingredients. So that's gonna be our butter goes in, and I set aside the papers so that I can grease the pan with them. And I know that it looks like I'm putting in 4 sticks instead of 2, but these are half sticks, so it does only add 2. And there are cats in the background being silly. Say hi, Artemis. Good girl. Say hi, Athena. That's as close to a hi as we get from her usually. And now that the cats have been silly and I put in my butter, we're gonna crack eggs. Our 2 eggs go in. Usually you'll use a separate bowl for the eggs. I've gotten good enough that I normally don't get shell in there. So you can see, get the extra goo. 1, 2 eggs. And you can check, no shells. No shells in there. Yeah. All right. We're gonna add our vanilla. We only need a little bit of it. So we've got a teaspoon measure. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Cap that back up. And this is when it starts smelling really good. So we need 3/4 cup of sugar, the white sugar. Sugar counts as a wet ingredient. Yeah, it's strange, but sugar does actually count as a wet ingredient. The flour, salt, and baking powder are going to be our dry ingredients that we'll do in a minute. There we go, 3/4 cup of sugar. So good. Now we're going to get out our brown sugar. I'm using light brown, but you can use either light brown or dark brown sugar. And this is going to be 1 cup and 1/4, so I've got 2 different measures for it. So 1 cup. And brown sugar usually comes out pretty clumpy like that, but that's fine. It'll all break apart as you mix. And if you get a little extra, that's fine because of the clumps. So that's 1 cup and 1/4 cup. There we go. And those are going to be our wet ingredients. And now it is time to mix them. We're going to break up the butter some. And start mixing. Starting to get all the clumps out of it. All the messy stuff and a cat. The other one went downstairs. So now that we've got it pretty well creamed, I'm going to grab my other bowl and do my dry ingredients, which are about to go in there as well. So with our dry ingredients, we're going to do our baking powder. We need 2 teaspoons of it. If I can get it open. Hey, there we go. I'm using my ½ teaspoon at the moment because my other one got dirty from the vanilla. You never want to use something wet and something dry. So I need 4 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is our baking soda. Baking powder. So there's our baking powder. And now our salt. We only need a ½ teaspoon of this, so I'm going to use that same measure and pour this one in until it's nice and full. There we go. ½ teaspoon of salt. And then 2 cups of flour. And yes, I know this is an oatmeal container. We like to reuse our containers. So, big thing of flour. The best part about this recipe is you don't need to sift the flour first, which is nice because sifting is long and messy. And that is 2 whole cups of flour. Goes right in there. So substitutes. And you can use flour substitutes if you're gluten-free. I haven't personally tried it, but most of them bake just as regular. You can always add in some banana if it doesn't look the right consistency after the gluten-free flours. So we're going to mix this up. I'm going to grab a big fork to mix it up. Yeah! It's in my face! So I like to mix my dry ingredients with a fork just to make sure that I get in between all those tiny little particles. And this is when it gets messy! Flour, 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 flour. And that's mixing up so that the salt gets kind of in everywhere so that you don't have one bite that's all just salt. Alrighty. Alright, so that's all nice and mixed. We are going to pour it into our wet ingredients and mix again. And I've switched over to a whisk instead of my first spoon because I needed to break up pieces more than I thought I would. A whisk is usually a little bit quicker too. Mix it all in! So we added a banana anyway because it was looking a little bit dry. And that can happen sometimes. This is a little bit more of a dry batter than a wet batter anyway, just because of all the oats and flour you have in it. So I'm going to get these out of the way. Switch back over to my big spoon now that it's mostly dry and just getting gummed up in my whisk. So now we've got all the dry ingredients nice and mixed in, our little bit of extra banana mixed in. So now we get to grease the pan. Now we get to grease the pan. So those sheets that I left behind from the butter, I'm gonna use to grease it up. And I'll probably like to use the ones that still have a little bit of butter stuck on them because that shows it'll really get, it's got a decent amount of grease to get it on there. And that's so that they don't stick to the pan when you try and get them out after you bake them. Grease up the sides too because this will be a little thick. I'm using a smaller pan than I usually would for it because I want nice thick ones for this. But usually it's a 10 by 15. This one is a 9-inch pan instead. So they're going to be a little bit thicker than normal. So now we're going to mix in our butterscotch and chocolate chips. I use 3/4 cup of both of these. And they don't want to open. So, have your parents cut them open if you need to. Oh, I smell them already. And you get 3/4 cup. If you get a little extra, that's fine. 3/4 cups of those. 3/4 cups of the chocolate. And then we're gonna add 2 cups of oats. And you can use quick oats or regular oats, whichever. And again, you could probably find a gluten substitute as well. I'm just gonna cut a little corner of this so that it pours nice, since we're not gonna use the whole bag and we'll wanna save it for later. And we're gonna pour 2 whole cups of oats. And we're going to mix that one more time. Alright, so we're getting all those oats and chips mixed in. You want to get them mixed really, really well so that it's throughout the whole batter and you don't have like a glob of them all in one spot. So we're mixing, mixing, mix, 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 mix. So we actually added just a little too much banana. It's a little stickier than normal, but it should still bake up really good and be very, very tasty. So now the fun part, it's going in the pan. Ah. This is not the there we go. Alright, so now that we scraped all that good stuff out of the bowl, obviously we can't just put it in like this. It's not going to bake right. So here's where we get really messy. You can get in there. You can use a spatula if you want to, but I've always done this with my fingers, and we're just going to squish it into all the corners so that it's all fill in the pan and all the same height so it all bakes at the same time. Get those corners. Get it in, get it in. And you kind of wiggle it towards the corner, wiggle it towards this corner. And now it's all about even. It is ready to go in the oven, and I'm ready to wash my hands again. Okay, now that I've washed all the goop off my hands, we are going to put our delicious, delicious oatmeal bars into the oven. Have your parents do this, kids, because the oven is very, very hot. We're gonna tuck them in and tuck them away, and they're gonna go in there for 20 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer. And now we wait, and the house smells really, really yummy. Alright, now that our timer went off, I'm gonna open the oven. Parents do this, not the kids. I have gloves on to keep my hands safe. And we're gonna pull out our delicious bars. They're gonna look like they're not quite done yet because they continue to bake a little bit longer while they're cooling. But they've got good consistency, and that's it. We let them cool for a bit, and then we cut them and we eat. Alright guys, hope you liked it. Can't wait to see you guys again at school, alright? Stay safe everyone.